Well, welcome to the Jarvis Sam Show. Welcome to another exciting episode. This week, I'm kicking off Women's History Month, and I have a special guest, and she's going to come on here and tell her story. Her name is Kendra Hall. I don't want to shortchange her, but she is a motivational speaker. She's an author. She has an incredible story. And honestly, at this point, if you were to look at her Instagram, you'd probably be like, she's probably a personal trainer too, because she does her thing at the gym too. So, but I don't want to shortchange on her credentials. So Kendra, I'm gonna kick it over to you and you just tell people a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much, Jarvis, for having me on your show. I feel like for me, I'm a connector of people and a motivator. I mentor, I'm an author, I am a public speaker, as well as I am a personal trainer as well. So, so you'll see some workouts with Kendra coming soon. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's the new initiative I have going on.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay.
And how are you? I mean, you have so much going on yourself. We have to introduce you.
The people know me, the podcast, the leadership, the entrepreneurship, the motivational speaking. I try to do a little bit of everything as well. I'm not on your level of fitness. I'm working. If I can get that down, I will feel like I made it. But I still struggle with the fitness piece. But I try to be a jack of all as well. But yeah, so nice to have you on. So
thank you for having me.
Of course. So you have this story, that has really kind of what you've kind of built your brand on. And this story, and of course I'm getting an Amber Alert. So your story is very, it was a journey of a young lady that hit some obstacles early in life, but you figured things out along the way and have turned those, those, I don't want to call them failures, but those learning moments that you had along the way, you turn those into inspiration, and you're using your story to inspire and to cultivate just a new generation of young ladies. And I'm a huge Jay-Z fan. So I think about a Jay-Z lyric when he says, Hove did that, so hopefully you don't have to go through that. So I feel like you put your story out there so that young ladies don't have to go through it. And if they do, they still get the inspiration that, hey, just because this is the hand you felt you were dealt, this isn't where you have to stay. This isn't where you there's always, as long as you wake up every single day, you have a new opportunity. You have a fresh deck of cards that you can go play with and continue to try to figure things out. So I would love for you just to share your story with our listeners, and we will go from there.
Wow. And thank you so much for that. I feel as though my brand is more based upon definitely my story and the lessons that I've learned, like you explained. And the one component is that these are faith-based lessons. So I don't want to leave that part out, because this is a God-centered book that I've written, and the principles that I teach are biblical principles and aligned with such. So this is a book that's going to give young women a strong foundational support in order to develop the critical thinking skills necessary to overcome obstacles in their life. And I think that's imperative. I mean, why make the same mistakes that you see others around you making? And how do you get yourself out of these closed window type of situations, these fixed windows that are sometimes, can be toxic relationships. And that's really, if we really think about a lot of the things that's going on in our lives, they revolve around toxic relationships, not just your romantic relationships, but just family, childhood, your parents at times. So this is definitely a book based upon so many different factors. And a little bit about me, and how I began, and how this journey started is, I did come from a 2-parent household. And I was in a situation where I was very much into church at a very young age. I was in church Monday, Wednesday, Friday at times, Saturday, twice on Sunday. And and so, and my freedom was limited, because I had to do extracurricular activities, not so much also from school, but outside of school, because our parents told us we had to play an instrument. That was a necessity. My parents are very much into education. They both had their master's degree. We were all planned children. There's 4 of us.
Wow.
And so, they expected, and my mother's a retired educator. So she expected excellence, especially when it came to education, which helped out, later on with, my siblings and so forth. They went to Ivy League schools, later on, and all of that. And, I had to read the dictionary as a child and, read books all the time. I had a very immersive, educationally and creative childhood, in essence. I had a childhood, I would say, up until the age of 13, when I decided to skip school one day with the boyfriend I had been hiding for the last year, sneaking him at church to the Bible study. We decided to skip school, and now I became pregnant from the first time I had sex at 13 years old. So before then, think of, I paint this picture so you can see the kind of the background where I came from, and to then the tragedy at that point, which was for my parents, of me being pregnant, because they would never have thought that would happen to their child, especially when they're in their mind doing all the things that they needed to do to keep me out of these types of situations, of these traps, in essence. And so, my parents didn't take it well, and I was cast out. I was disowned. And, I went from sleeping on the Craftmatic bed on vibrate every night, or, back it up, just, little fun things that I had, that I took for granted. My little Apple IIc. I had to say that.
Wow.
Little, my little Nintendos and all that. So, the things I had at the time, I did not understand the full value of what my parents sacrificed in order to get to where I needed to be at, in that time. And so, I made the decision to have sex. I got pregnant. My parents cast me out. I went from living, more comfortably to sleeping on the floor, with mice around, and trying to, cover myself with a blanket at night to try to keep, on a hot basement floor, from the top, in essence, straight down to the bottom in a matter of, months.
One decision.
You know what I mean?
One decision.
And so this is what happens for a lot of people. It doesn't take, 50 times for your life to change. It takes sometimes that one decision, right? And, you may have been warned of what not to do, but when do you take it seriously and say, you know what, I better not do that thing? And sometimes I think when you're younger, we feel as though, and it's scientifically proven, hormonally, you feel as though you're invincible during a certain age range. So for me, I'm sure that was that age range where I felt as though I was invincible, and these things would not happen to me. And so that's why it's so important, again, to start to know yourself now, when, especially the young people, if they're, for those who are young youth listening in, this is the time when you're in that period where I was at, where I got pregnant at 12, 13, that age range. I should have been learning myself, and so I had to learn myself along the way of living as in an adult world. And where I was thrust into adult situations, but I did not have the adult privileges, the adult powers. And so that's another big thing that I speak about, because I became a teen parent. From that one pregnancy, I became had the child and my son, but at 5 days after my 14th birthday, and slowly throughout the years to kind of speed it up a little bit. In essence, I had 3 kids by the time I was 18.
Wow.
And so, things happen fast when you're living a certain type of lifestyle, to whereas I was living in my own little quasi family situation, as a young lady, and dealing with relationship and relationships that were long term and I wasn't mentally able to deal with, because I wasn't old enough mentally. I didn't have the maturity. Neither did the person I was in the relationship with. So it was just a cycle of a toxic relationship that I became, in essence, trapped in, metaphorically trapped in for, the duration, the bulk of my teenage years. Right. Just in these different situations, to whereas, I feel like I'm a wife, I'm doing these wifely things in essence, and dealing with these issues of relationships, relationship issues that I had no background and no one to speak to about, because my peers were not able to help me, and the adults around me, it seemed as though were just wanted to find ways to punish me. I wasn't given the game. I was given always the chastisement, and someone trying to teach me a lesson in the harshest way, as opposed to someone just trying to give me the game and let me know, hey, this is what you need to do to get out of it. It was always kind of like, let's, stick the knife in a little further, so she doesn't do this thing again. But that was the disconnect that I had, and I wanted to change as I became older. And that's one of the reasons that inspired me to write this book, because I wanted to be the adult that I needed as a youth, and that I didn't have. To give these young people the game as far as what they need to do to build that strong foundation to where they can flourish. And this is a proven system because I went through it. So it's not something that is going to be an easy journey, because life isn't easy, but it's worth it because it teaches you how to maneuver away from situations and out of situations that could really be to your detriment. So, it's definitely, it's been a journey.
So I heard you mention toxic relationships. Can you just talk about like the impact that toxic relationships can have, and like, I guess just your big picture thoughts on what a toxic relationship is and how that can impact young ladies?
Absolutely. I feel like, for me, and I would even go back to those who were in their teens, right? A lot of teens are getting into these relationships, and it's almost like if you're not in a relationship as a teen, you're shunned in a lot of ways, especially now in the age of social media, where that's really something that I feel a lot is society has encouraged. So that's what I see. And so I feel as though you get into these relationships and you have not many things to offer, but you're, something sexual. It becomes a very fuzzy relationship, and or if you're depending on someone too much, it becomes a codependent relationship, and now you're developing different ties to people that you don't need to be tied to, because nobody knows themselves at that age. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And it becomes too deep. You're in too deep, and you don't know, and you can't deliver on a lot of the promises that you'd like to keep, and I'm going to give you an example. And I say this because, again, when you're teens, you have these grandiose
Mm-hmm.
ideas of what life is going to look like or what life can be.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality of that can be very different. And I know for me, like, when I was with my son's father, at 12 and we were on the phone, he would always say, we're going to go and move to my aunt's house down south. And I'm going to take the bed from the basement, from the attic. We're going to bring it down. And he had the whole setup, like, and so we had in our minds, this is what we were going to do. We were going to run away. We were going to do these different things. And, everybody was going to be accepting of this decision. We like as if we had these different powers to do so.
Right.
And the reality was, later on having a child, you realize that you're not 18. You can't even sign an apartment lease yourself. Right. So how, you know what I mean? Like you're in a situation where you're truly at the mercy of the adults around you, because somebody has to sign for you to get your own place. And so you realize that the power that you thought you had is really does not align with the reality of what you can do. And a lot of times when you're young, you get these, a lot of the young men make these grandiose promises to these young women. And they may feel as though they can deliver on it. And maybe a few can, and I can't count those out. But the bulk of people get wrapped up into these different promises of what life is going to look like with the two of them together. And it's going to be based upon some type of fairy tale thought process.
Right.
And, that's that society pushes with Disney and everyone else, right? You get that the Prince Charming is going to come and rescue you on and I speak about that too in the book, in my book rather, is about me feeling at that age that was going to be my life with this boy. Is that, I dreamt about the Prince Charming scenario, and real life is a lot different because you have to learn yourself before you're able, and you have to learn yourself to love yourself. That's the whole goal too, of learning yourself, so you can really love yourself and understand what love feels like, what love looks like. And so, because if you can't love yourself, and you don't know yourself to love yourself, you can't love anyone else. And now you become just a trauma bonds with people. You hurt one another when you don't know yourself. It's a lot more difficult to maintain these relationships with people when neither of the person knows themselves. Again, these are the types of things that leads to a toxic relationship. When neither party knows themselves, and they don't have that self-awareness, they don't have I always say knowledge of self. Because when you have knowledge of self, you don't move in certain ways, and that toxic energy doesn't even flow towards you in that way, in that same fashion. So one of the things I feel as though for me was where I had a wake up call as a teenager. I was in a domestic violence relation type of situation. So I remember, us, my son's father and I getting into an argument and being thrown. One of the straws was me being thrown through last straws was me being thrown through a double glass window as a teenager. And I had to be, I had to basically run off in essence, and go into a domestic violence shelter as a teen. And, I had so many experiences through that it really changed the way that I think, and that I thought about relationships in general, because it changes how you think about, like you said before about, toxic relationships. It really does permeate through the creases of your life. And it really does, it changes each aspect of the things that you can be working with, you're not able to work with anymore, because now you basically cut off your blessings from dealing with people that don't mean you any good in so many different ways, because they don't love themselves to love you. So
man, that's huge, saying that because at that age, like you already said, like they don't know, no one knows who they are. So
No.
it's almost like you're walking into something that almost, it's like a ticking time bomb, right? Like at that age, like, because it's
Right.
like something's bound to go wrong. Um, so with that toxic, just on the in the vein of toxic relationships, how do you feel that situation, though, that toxic relationship that you had so early in life, how has that shaped and molded who you are today, and how does that affect the relationship that you have now?
I think I definitely feel like, I've been through so many different situations. Um, you know, I still got married early and all of those different things. So, going through different scenarios and different situations, I have a different mindset than I did as a teenager, just about life and about people. And now I've realized that it's not so much about my fairy tale; it's about the person, right?
Mm,
It's not about it's not about this fantasy. And I think that a lot of people need to get out of looking at people as though they're their savior or their God. That's the big thing, that people put others on this pedestal and they give them the power that only belongs to the Lord. So, then they find themselves worshiping. They don't realize that
hmm
they've made these people their false idols, and they're
hmm
worshiping these people in a relationship to the point where they go crazy if the
hmm
relationship doesn't work. And
Right.
that is really becomes the toxicity of this, because
hmm
the person's not able to see themselves anymore. They only
Right.
see the red, the fog, that what they don't have.
Right.
The person becomes a possession.
Mm,
And so we don't own people. Okay.
right.
And that's
Right.
the big thing that people have to understand. No one is owned. They
Yeah.
are only given to you for a reason, season, and
Mm,
prayerfully for some a lifetime, for
hmm
those who are, God has aligned as such. But again, who you align yourself with is going to really determine the your life, how your life is going to go. If you align yourself with someone is only going to cause you grief, then you're going to have a miserable life. If you're 90% of the time miserable, then you're going to be in a miserable situation in your life. So, it really, for me, I've really taken into account of the people that I have in my circle. And I think that that goes for every relationship that I have.
hmm
I know who to limit time with,
hmm
even for family. I know
hmm
who to go to and who to run to. Like the Escape
hmm
song says, who can I run to? I've learned who I can run to. And it's a very good song for people to listen to, for them to do some introspection and ask themselves,
hmm
hey, who can you run to? Right?
hmm hmm
Because a lot of times you find in these toxic relationships, the person that you desire the most may not be the person that you can
mm,
run to.
mm,
And that is
mm,
that is traumatizing for a lot of people. And that sometimes, what are you getting out of these
mhm,
relationships with people? And what are you putting into it? So really, it goes down to the value that you bring and the value that you receive. And all different instances, it's not just enough to spend majority of your time with somebody who makes you feel happy. What is their purpose,
mm,
right?
mm,
And what are they talking about? Are you the
mhm,
only one I've
mm,
become um more aware of, more self-aware, and I've also become more cognizant of how I spend my time and who I spend my time with. I understand the value of my time and my fellowship, and time with God too. I can't. If I could be praying and or fellowshipping, learning, doing something productive, and as opposed to just spending time with somebody because they make me feel good. That too, you got to be with somebody who you're equally yoked with, right?
mm,
That you're
mm.
learning together. That person's not just in there as a statue. That they serve a purpose. And so, those toxic relationships have taught me to really value myself, value my time, and understand the people around me and who they are. I've listened. Again, that's another big thing, is listening. I've
Mm-hmm.
listened more to people.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes when we listen to how people speak about others in their circle, as well as how they deal with stress, because stress is how you get to learn to know someone, right? Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
amazing when it's happy,
Mm-hmm.
but how are you? And it's not something that you want to be the person that self-imposes the stress to speed up the process, but over time, you'll be able to learn how people cope with stress. And that to me is the ultimate way to listen to somebody, because
Mm-hmm.
that's when you learn how does this person deal with life,
That's
right?
right.
You have to observe. You have to be, you have to pay attention to what that person also is listening to, and all of those different things, because whatever it is that they do, and if it's someone that you plan to spend time with, whether it be a friend, a business partner, any of those things, make sure that their habits and their foundation are not going to rub off on you in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really the main thing. Is really I watched the company that I keep a lot more than I did in the past.
That's good. So I'm glad you mentioned listening. Listening is something I'm huge on. I I think, especially in the leadership realm, people think that the only good leaders are leaders that are super vocal and can just dominate a conversation and can just jump. I believe that there's such value in being able to listen and understand people. I believe there's value in, because anytime you're an employer or a boss or something, sometimes your team just needs to be heard. Sometimes they just want to know that you care. And the only way that you can care is by sometimes just sitting back and listening to what they have to say, and not just listening to respond, but listening to understand them. And I think that's a huge thing in our society, is that people hate to listen. People love to, or people hate to listen to what they don't want to listen to, right? Like they'll listen to certain things, but they really don't value listening. And something that I know that I took away from your book, you talked about how if you listen, people will tell you who they are, right? And that's how you can truly identify those toxic relationships. If we can sit back and really listen and not just let that infatuation or whatever it is that has drawn us to that person, if we just sit back, listen, study what's really going on, study what's happening, because even as a man, I've had toxic relationships, right? And things that could have been avoided had my eyes been more open to what it needs to be open to. Because again, a lot of times you want just the statue or the trophy or whatever, but eventually, if you're not listening and truly seeing what's going on, when times get hard, to your point, when something stressful happens, when times get rough, that's how you're going to find out what this person's truly made of. And it's those tough times that show you that, hey, this relationship is built to last, or this not what it's supposed to be. Because it's easy to, I talked about on a previous podcast, like for a leader, it's easy to lead when everything's great. In a relationship, it's easy to smile at somebody across the table when y'all are eating fine steak and sipping champagne and stuff. Like, that's easy to be in love. It's easy to be in love at a wedding, but it's not easy to be in love during a crisis. It's not easy to weather those storms. So that's where you really find out, like, who's really with you, right? So one thing I took away, you talked about how, you grew up and you went to church pretty much 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. And then, but now you end up writing this book that has these biblical principles. Did your background, your Christian or faith-based background, uh, just come back into play, or did you lose it along the way? Like, how did your
No.
faith journey continue, or
So
how
I've
did it?
always so were you said, how did my faith journey
Yeah, like did because I mean, obviously you had the toxic relationship time as a teenager, and I know sometimes as teenagers, like, we don't feel like we need that. We're indestructible. So kind of how did you pick your, like, did you lose your faith journey, or did you feel like God was with you that whole time? Or like, how did your faith journey continue?
I would say that my faith journey never ended,
Okay.
because even in the midst of what I was going through, and I was angry, never angry at God. I was angry at the powerlessness that I had as a youth. I felt as though, I was being pushed into adult situations that I wanted to succeed in, but I wasn't given the tools to succeed in those situations. And so I was in a situation, I was angry. So, and I was also feeling very determined to push forward. And I always prayed. I was always praying, even in, pregnant. I was praying, at 13. That's how I was able to make it through. And, I listened to some certain, I had my mix of gospel and, my Kirk Franklin and, Hezekiah and all of that. And then I had, then I had my Onyx on at the same time. So, I was mixing, in essence.
Right.
And so even though I wasn't fully on the path that I wanted to, or I felt as though I should have been, because I was stuck, I felt as though I was stuck in this relationship. That was a lot of my hindrance to me, even though I felt as though I needed it at the time. But I still went to church as much as I could. And even like my oldest son, and people say, well, I had more church clothes than I had regular clothes.
Wow. Wow.
So, I mean,
okay.
I still went because that's what I knew. So I went to the library as a kid. I took my kids to the library,
Gotcha.
As a teen, I rode the bus. I took them on the bus, and so these are the same things that I knew. I took them to the planetarium because I like the planetarium.
Okay.
Understand, I'm still young. So these are the things that I knew at the time. So I didn't veer from them because these were engraved in me. So I knew to go to church. I felt comfortable there. So I would always find a church around to be able to take the kids to church. And I wasn't like an Easter Sunday parent who only dressed them up. So, I felt as though that my journey just became more faith based for me, because every time I stepped out on faith, God helped covered me. Even, I went to school as an adult, and to college rather as an adult. I graduated high school early. I graduated at 16. I was done. So there were some years that I was working and or just, working and trying to find a way to go to college. And so, because I didn't have a babysitter and all of those different things, I didn't have any, that support system. And so, one day I decided I'm going to, go and sign up for school. And I signed up, for college. I signed up for college. I didn't know at the time how I was going to get a babysitter or what was going to happen. And like, who's going to watch these 3 babies of mine? And, when I was walking away from the college and going to the bus stop to get on the bus, I ran into a friend of mine who was, we hadn't spoken in a while. She had just moved around the corner from me, and she was looking for a babysitter for her children for this time, a certain time frame. So we were able to barter, services for babysitting, and both of us be able to go to school. And that's just how God has always worked in my life. I have to do the first step. I had to go out and sign up and trust that he was going to make the next step, so that's, and I say that because these are the types of situations that's happened to me that I have really had to do. And I can name a few more. And I had to actually take that first leap of faith, and trust that he was going to catch me. And so this is where it's very important that we trust in God to be able to know that he's going to catch us. And God was always building my trust along this journey. Trust me. And it took for me to be able to fully surrender for me to get to this point. And it's not without that we're at perfection, because we're always going to be fine tuning ourselves on a daily basis. It's always struggles. However, thinking back to where I came mentally and spiritually, definitely I'm in a much different place, because I'm able to see how God has truly directed my steps, and to understand that there's a method to it. Right. And that the method is what we need to pass down in each one teach one fashion to the youth, for them to be able to deal with these hard times that they're going to have to go through, whatever they may be in life, to know, hey, you have to trust God. You're going to have to do faith and works. Take the step, and then God's going to do the, do the works. And so that's really what, the book is about. I would say fully, you'll see a lot of situations where it took faith plus works in order to get to the next level.
Yeah, my guy, John Gray, he always says, you do what you can do in the natural, and God does the supernatural. So,
amen.
Because God ain't going to do what you can do for yourself,
No.
But you take that first step, he'll bring it home for you.
Amen.
We are running a little short on time, but I do want to give you just a time to talk about all the awesome things you have going on, your book, your website, everything, how the people can get in contact with you. If you could share that information.
Absolutely. And thank you again. So I wanted to just point out, I'm also a writer for Newsbreak, for the Newsbreak app. So check out my writings, Kendra Hall. Yes.
I actually have that app.
I have a good amount of writings on there. So,
okay.
Yeah, thank you. So I have that link into my Instagram highlights. My Instagram is justusjewelz with a Z, JUSTUSJEWELZ on Instagram, as well as Facebook and Twitter. I'm also on Clubhouse at justusjewelz with a Z. So hit me up on there. And you can also connect with me via my website and purchase my book. I have 2 books now. I have an ebook as well as my softcover book, and you can purchase both, as well as sign up for mentorship I offer on my website. And there's, I think I spoke about this earlier, the new Workout with Kendra coming soon, which you'll see very, very soon, some new developments. And those are all going to be really launched on my site, www.droppinjewelz with a Z, DROPPINJEWELZ.com.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sharing with your story, and just being an inspiration and a light. I love the fact that you have the faith-based information out here. So it's not just you talking about stuff. You're backing it up with biblical principles, which I think is beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we get out of here?
I would just want to tell people to affirm over your life the good things that you want to have, and see it, feel it, taste it, touch it in your mind, touch it in your heart, in your spirit, feel like it's yours, because prosperity and greatness is for you. And one of the things that I always say to myself is, all things lead to my success, wealth, and happiness, no matter what. And I want to leave with that affirmation for those who are looking for something amazing to tell themselves when they're looking in the mirror each day. And I repeat it 100 times. I know it's a lot, but it's worth it. All things lead to my success, wealth, and happiness, no matter what. Say that, feel it, and embody it. So I would love to leave you guys with that. And I appreciate you so much, Jarvis. And until the next time.
Until next time. Well, thank you for listening to this episode. Of course, you guys can find me on Instagram, the Jarvis Sam Show, or you can also find me at my personal Instagram, JarvisSam_, as well as jarvissam.com. This podcast and every other podcast can be found there, along with my blogs, and everything else that I do is all housed there. Kendra, again, it was a pleasure having you this week. Listeners, we will catch y'all next week.